So for scholars, and remember this document was written in the classical Chinese, it was aimed towards scholarly, educated, intelligent people. RISSHO, even the word RISSHO, difficult for us to understand as Westerners, but even the word RISSHO was a shock to them because of the deep meaning it contained, challenging everything in the religious world. There also, RISSHO contains the three great secret laws. So as you understand, RISSHO is made up from the words ritsu and sho, establishing the truth. So let's see how it contains the three great secret laws. The first of those is the Honmon no Honzon. We'll take that one first. The true object of worship. So sho of RISSHO equals the ultimate truth, right? The truth. So therefore, sho equals myo. Sho can be also translated as myo, or myoho renge kyo, or the Gohonzon, right? So RISSHO can mean, therefore, establishing the Gohonzon, the truth, right? The Gohonzon in the time of Mappo. And secondly, Honmon no Daimoku, right? The second great secret law, the invocation. So chanting Daimoku is practice, isn't it? And it's faith to actually chant the Daimoku. So it's faith and practice. So it's by having faith in the truth, which is the sho, the truth is the sho of RISSHO, right? It leads to that action, doesn't it? So by the action of chanting, you are inevitably establishing the ultimate truth. Okay? So you can see that RISSHO is the action of practice, which is, wherever you may be, to establish the ultimate truth in your life and circumstances and environment, isn't it? You may be the first person to live in a particular country or area. The moment you chant Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, like our friend from Greece who lives on his own in Salonika, so he is establishing the ultimate truth, RISSHO, in Salonika. Okay? So this is correct action, isn't it? Establishing the truth. So Tiantai said, by understanding the mystic law, true action will follow. This is RISSHO, establishing the truth and correct action. In other words, to spread the truth. And spreading is establishing, isn't it? Then finally, Honmon no Kaidan, this means, doesn't it, in this case, RISSHO, or the word ritsu, means establishing meaning in one place, or one land, or one village, or one neighborhood, or in the world. So it's establishing the truth in one place, in a particular place, or land, or sanctuary. So in other words, this means in its turn, doesn't it, creating the Buddha's land. You establish the ultimate truth, which is the Gohonzon, and you plant it in a particular house or village or city or country, and then gradually, through establishing the truth and the action which accompanies it, it spreads, doesn't it, ever wider. So in this way, the whole teaching of Buddhism, Nichiren Daishonin's Buddhism, is contained, as you can see, in this title. So of course too, because RISSHO contains all the three secret laws and is concerned with the establishment of the truth, the establishment of that truth by one person will then affect the lives of every other person around it. So this is what the RISSHO Ankoku Ron is all about, when you think about it, isn't it? Nichiren Daishonin was trying to establish the ultimate truth in Japan, knowing that it would then change the lives of everybody gradually until Japan itself, was benefiting from that ultimate truth. So I hope you can now understand quite clearly what an unbelievably important this gosho this is. And in the next half of the lecture, we'll deal with some of the sentences in a certain amount of greater detail, so that we're truly understanding the meaning of that first passage. All right, everybody, so let's have a break. As you can see, in this first question, Nichiren Daishonin is setting, if you like, setting the scene for everything that's to follow, by describing the conditions in Japan at that time. So this is, again, preparation, in terms of preparation, revelation, and transmission. So then he goes on, having set the scene, to explain why this state of affairs exists and what the solution is. So that, of course, is revelation and transmission. So he describes the incredible sufferings of the people in here, and their bewilderment and confusion, not only of the people, but also of the ruling authorities. And he vividly describes how they're groping about with these strange practices, mostly superstitious beliefs, in order to try to change the situation with no effect at all. So, as I said earlier, although this was the scene in 13th century Japan, in a deeper sense, this is the setting, isn't it, of Mappo. This is a vivid picture of the age of Mappo, predicted by Shakyamuni Buddha 3,000 years before. And as I said, today, it is the scene, isn't it, of the whole world. You can see the whole world in these lines and sentences. And then at the end of it all, there's that important cry from the heart. Then why is it that the world has already fallen into decline, and that the laws of the state have come to an end? What is wrong? What error has been committed? Exactly the same cry exists in the hearts of millions of human beings today. Can you imagine, in the hearts of an Ethiopian who's dying of starvation, or indeed the hearts of many of us when the Cold War starts to get more intense between Russia and the United States? All of us have this cry. Those who think at all have this cry in their hearts, don't they? So this is so relevant, every word of it, to the world that we live in today. So not only, as I said earlier, was Japan suffering from natural disasters, but also socially it was in a state of upheaval. And as I explained, the emperor was a puppet by now. Buddhism itself was in a turmoil. Some of the priests of these sects were like gods. The people sort of worshipped them as if they were superhuman, playing on the superstitions of the people of those times. And then, as you may know, various temples were guarded by bands of armed monks carrying weapons, and you can imagine such a thing. This was to guard the riches of those temples, the treasure that they'd hoarded in them, from the bands of samurai and so on. And added to that, the economy of Japan, as it was in those medieval times, had totally collapsed. There was poverty, and because of poverty there was crime, stealing, starvation, and many of the people had really given up any hope for the future. And of course, as I said, these various religions, were playing on this situation in order to get more and more followers. Like the Nenbutsu, who said, if you really chant Yanamamita Butsu, then you'll go to heaven. Stick it out now. You'll go to heaven later. So this bred nothing else but apathy and a negative outlook on life, an inability to challenge anything because of these beliefs. So Nichiren Daishonin then, as you know, bases many of the arguments in this RISSHO ANKOKU RON, in the paragraphs that follow, on the theory of the 3 calamities and 7 disasters, which is written out here. So these were taught in various ways, in various sutras, prior to the Lotus Sutra, particularly the Yakushi Sutra and the Ninno Sutra. So I don't think I need go through them. I'm sure you've all had a chance to read them. But basically, what the Buddhist teaching says is that if the people slander the true law, and mind you, this is whether that slander is out of ignorance or deliberate, cold, calculated slander, then inevitably these calamities and disasters will begin to arise. If the people follow the wrong teachings and slander the true teachings, knowingly or unknowingly. So this is, for this reason, based on this teaching, Nichiren Daishonin was able to say with utter conviction that definitely if Japan continued in this way, civil war or internal strife and foreign invasion were bound to incur, because they happened to be the only two of these calamities and disasters that Japan had not yet suffered from. So his conviction in the righteousness of Buddhism was complete, and he was able to say definitely, this is bound to happen. So this, as I say, is through people not mending their ways and slandering the law out of ignorance or knowing. So if we now just take a look at the world, at the same time, or roughly around that period, say between the 13th and the 15th centuries, outside of Japan, you will also see a general deterioration, or to put it in a more Buddhist way, the causes were being laid for the suffering and problems that were to follow in our times today. So it was definitely a period where there was the beginnings of a decline in religion, or in what's known as the higher religions everywhere. So, as you know, towards the 15th century, the Reformation occurred, the revolt against the Roman Catholic Church and the rule and power of Rome in the Christian world. So this caused a great upheaval in the religious sense. The Renaissance was also to follow Nichiren Daishonin's lifetime a little later, 100 years or 200 years, which led to a greater freedom of thinking and action, not restricted by the boundaries that were set by religions. So in a sense that was another form of revolt against religious control. And then of course there were the great religious wars of that period. So in the 13th century the Arabs started to begin to conquer a great deal of Europe. And particularly, of course, they overran most of Spain. And then there were wars within religions. That is to say, rather than in the case of the Arabs, Islam against Christianity, there was Christian against Christian, particularly in what's known as the 100 Years' War in Europe. And in my own country, of course, Henry VIII severed all connection with the Roman Catholic Church and established the Church of England in our country. So of course these religious upheavals, still the causes and effects of them are evident, aren't they, right up to today. So in the Lebanon, fundamentally below everything, it began as a religious struggle. Weak religious teachings are at the basis or the excuse for the problem of the Lebanon today. And the same applies to Ireland. So although, for instance, in Northern Ireland, in a sense you could say that the terrorism is really conducted by bands of people who are virtually gangsters, but nevertheless, below that, the problem is still religious, basically. It's because of religion and the weakness of religion that these situations can arise. So this is really the karma of war, isn't it, which Europe particularly has suffered from a lot. So in terms of eternal life, if you fight and kill, then inevitably, in your future lifetimes, you will find yourself fighting and being killed or killing again. This is inevitable in terms of the law of cause and effect. So you set up, don't you, the causes and effects for continuous war. And this we've seen over the last 2,000 years on our continent. So of course it is through the practice, if you like, through RISSHO ANKOKU RON, through establishing the ultimate truth in each one of our hearts, and better still, in each country, that karma of war can be gradually changed. So this is the urgency, of course, of our peace movement, of the efforts we have to make to create this peace force by the year 2000. We have to have enough people to actually change the karma of a country, or begin to change that karma for the better, in sense of the eternal causes and effects that arise from waging war. So also, at that particular time, elsewhere in the world, as I told you earlier, the Mongols had overrun most of Asia. There was a new power control in existence there. And there were other happenings. As you may know, in the 12th and 13th and 14th centuries, the Black Death, or the Great Plague as it was known, swept across great areas of Europe, reducing the population of Europe by more than a third, so one is told in the history books. This was also happening at that period. And the hold of religion on the people, as I said, was beginning to weaken. In other words, the existing order of things was beginning to collapse, and a new order arising in its place. And of course that new order culminated, didn't it, in the doctrines of materialism, the rise of science and technology, and their ability to prove in some cases that the blind beliefs of the religions could not possibly be true, thus shaking the confidence of the people in their religious practices. At the same time, however, the world was also just beginning to get smaller, wasn't it? Because the 12th and 13th century was also, in the 14th century, were the ages of the great discoverers, Marco Polo, Columbus, Drake. All these people were beginning to discover the world, and through that various cultures were being thrown together for the first time, and that also meant that various religions were becoming aware of each other at the same time. So going forward to today, certainly if you look at this list, you can see every one of those calamities and disasters, can't you? If you look at the world as a whole, they're all going on at this particular time now. And as I said earlier, they're really intensifying. So war still goes on, despite the threat of the nuclear bomb, despite the fact that something like 20 to 30 million people were killed in World Wars I and II. Yet still human beings are going to war, which is proof, isn't it, of the teachings of Nichiren Daishonin, that nothing can change unless it changes in the hearts of each individual person through the human revolution. This is the point, isn't it? You can't eradicate war unless you eradicate or change and transform the tendencies towards violence and war that exist in each human being. This is really all a part of the ultimate truth of life, isn't it? So also today we see inflation all over the world. We've all suffered from it in one way or another. And famine. 1/3 of the population of the world are underfed. And of course, as we've seen recently, millions are starving. There is great epidemics still in many countries which are not yet conquered by medical science. And the extraordinary thing is that where medical science has conquered pestilence or disease, then another disease appears in its place, which is mental sickness, isn't it? So in the West, where disease is very tightly under control now, we see the hospitals full of people with mental instability and sickness instead. So again, it's proof of this fact that nothing can change unless those tendencies in human life, which bring about sickness, war, pollution, and all the rest of it, are changed at the heart of things. So likewise today, we see, of course, quite frequently tremendous natural disasters as well in various countries, earthquakes, hurricanes, storms, so on. And also, don't we see changes in the heavens? and solar eclipses which are out of season or out of rhythm. So the changes we see in the heavens today, one example is pollution. You don't see the heavens. It's getting better in Japan now, but there was a time when you couldn't see the moon and the stars because of pollution. In my own country also things are better now, but everything was, under a fog of pollution when I was a small boy. So this is, these things we can see. As you know, there is also, the scientists say that if we all go on using aerosol cans, in the end, the ozone belt that protects this earth will be affected. This is also a change taking place in the heavens, isn't it? So, none of these things are just airy, language. They all have a deep meaning. So, people, of course, also are becoming increasingly aware, aren't they, that you can't solve things through politics or economics or science. You can't solve these problems. So this is why they give out this cry. How are we going to deal with it? What is wrong? How to deal with it? So we're still, despite that, in the West and in Europe, we are actually slaves still to politics, to economics and science. It's true, isn't it? So somehow this has to be changed. All the emphasis is on those shallow aspects of society. We have to change it through the establishment of the ultimate truth, isn't it? Only then, when you get to the heart of things, can this situation be changed. Now, I remember Mr. Izumi, such a great man, and such down-to-earth guidance, but I remember him saying, I think it was when he came to the UK, saying, you can't cure a baby's diarrhea by smacking a plaster on its bottom. But really that's what the governments of this world are doing, aren't they? They're trying to cure the diarrhea just by putting a plaster on it. But nothing can stop this situation until you get to the heart of the trouble. This is the point. So, having talked about that, let's go on now and study the answer. I'll ask Bill to read it. Answer, although it's really very short, actually summarizes all the other answers that Nichiren Daishonin gives throughout the gosho. So this is why, of course, Dr. Yamazaki chose this particular question and answer. In a sense, the whole message of the RISSHO ANKOKU RON is contained in this one answer, though in later parts of the gosho he studies these in much greater detail. So we can get, in other words, the overall message from studying this one point. So as you can understand, and we've said already, the cause of the people's sufferings is the 3 calamities and 7 disasters. Why should the 3 calamities and 7 disasters occur? We've said in a general sense that it's because people are slandering the law either intentionally or through ignorance. But still, we haven't said why this should happen. So, I just ask Bill to read that sentence, the people of today, at the bottom of the page there.
The people of today all turn their backs upon what is right. To a man, they give their allegiance to evil. That is the reason why the benevolent deities have abandoned the nation, why sages leave and do not return, and in their stead come devils and demons, disasters and calamities that arise one after another.
So people turn their backs on what is right. Therefore, he says, the 3 calamities and 7 disasters occur. So what is right, of course, is the ultimate truth. For Napo, the right teaching is the Gohonzon of the 3 great secret laws. So, turning one's back, however, on that ultimate truth, slandering is slandering what is right. Therefore, because of that, and because of following false teachings instead of the ultimate truth, which is the teaching for the age of Napo, people develop a negative influence, a negative view of the world. an inability to see the truth in what is happening around them, and therefore are totally swayed by what is happening in their environment. So, of course, it is the state of the people's lives which creates the upheaval in the environment, but equally in turn, it is the state of the environment which affects their lives. So it's, as you know, through the principle of Esho Funi, it's a two-way thing. Whatever happens, life becomes negative in a general sense. People's lives are out of rhythm with the rhythm of life, which is essentially creative and forward-moving, isn't it? Instead of that, they're stationary, stagnant, or going backwards in their lives. And because the people's lives are negative, the Shoten Zenjin, the Buddhist gods, or the forces of the universe, which in a natural sense protect life which is vibrant, right, and valuable, fail to function. They're unable to function if a person's life is negative. If a nation's life is negative, they are able to function for the benefit of a whole nation or race. So, I mean, an example I always give, because it's simple, is the sun. The sun is the greatest creator, right? The sun makes everything grow. The sun makes us feel healthy. But also the sun can destroy you. If your life is apathetic or negative, lazy, or slovenly. If you lie in the sun too long, beyond the period of common sense, it destroys your skin, doesn't it? And if you lie there longer than that, it'll dehydrate your body, and you could even die. Likewise, you know, if you're going on a desert expedition, and because of anger or irritation, you don't take enough petrol, the sun will kill you. So this is the natural relationship between human life and the Buddhist gods, the forces of the universe that are there for our protection. But they can only protect if one's life is vibrant and positive. So what do you do in the first prayer of Gongyo every day? We pray to the Buddhist gods in gratitude for their protection. At the same time, of course, we are making our declaration to them. Rather like saying, don't worry, I'm going to be feeding with you with Daimoku again today. You feed the forces of the universe. If you feed those forces positively, they will react positively. But if they're not being fed, and they're swamped by negativity, then they won't function at all. So this is why the 3 calamities and 7 disasters arise. This is why it arose in 13th century Japan, and this is why it is now arising everywhere in the world. That sort of apathy and negativity destroys life force. The Buddhist gods, the Shoten Zenjin, react to life force. So the greatest evil is anything which saps or destroys life force. Because it takes away, doesn't it, the vitality not just of the people, but of the society and of the land and all the positive protective influences of the universe. Now, of course, in other goshos, Nichiren Daishonin goes into this in even more detail, explaining the principle behind it. But the proof of it is wherever we look. But when the world's young, it has lots of life force. Just like a young boy, full of life force. But as the world begins to get older, that natural life force becomes exhausted. Just like our own lives, it has to be replaced. So by the time I was in my early 40s, my natural good fortune had disappeared. This was before I found the Gonzi. I haven't got time to go into the story, but my natural good fortune that I was born with had gone. So everything in my life was coming down. But then I started to practice Nam-myoho Renge-kyo and began to build it all again. We have to generate, in other words, life force. We have to follow a way of life and teachings which are generating life force. This is crucial for the happiness of the world. Well, this is the message of the RISSHO ANKOKU RON, and of course it is the message that we have to convey by every possible means to the people that surround us in our ordinary daily lives, so that more and more people become aware of the vital importance of life force, not only for their own lives, but also for the environment which surrounds them. So, if you could read 2b, in modern times, literally leaving family life. As you know, Shakyamuni Buddha left family life. He went out into the forest to search for enlightenment. This was the old way, and in countries like India, you found, and you still find today, mendicants, strange prophets and all the rest of it, who are wandering in the jungles. But in these times, that means leaving family life, opening your eyes to life, looking beyond your garden fence, looking beyond your domestic life and the life in your place of work to something deeper, isn't it? That is to say, your view of life's eternity as a bodhisattva of the earth. This is what it means by saying leaving family life. In this age, looking beyond just being a parent or a businessman or a student to that deeper aspect of life. And he says here, he hopes to attain Buddhahood. So of course, Nichiren Daishonin leads the way there to what follows, which is to really castigate those priests who are teaching false teachings which breed ignorance and loss of life force. And he says in various places, to have a shaven head or wear priest robes doesn't mean faith. He emphasizes that faith is devotion and determination to practice that faith and apply it to daily life to the full. So in our case, as follows of Nichiren Daishonin, faith is the action, isn't it, of doing the three practices, doing one's human revolution, working for Kosen Rufu. That is seeking Buddhahood. So these false teachings also have often taught, and this includes Christianity, that desires should be suppressed, haven't they? In the 10 Commandments of Christianity, in various other ways, you are asked, to separate the body from the flesh. Of course, Buddhism says that is impossible. That's a false teaching which will inevitably lead to a feeling of failure and a feeling of guilt because you can't live up to it. So in a sense, Buddhism would say that is removing religion from the people, isn't it? By teaching such a thing which is impossible. So Buddhism, Daishonin's Buddhism, on the contrary, says you can turn your desires into enlightenment. That desires are a natural part of human life. That if we have no desires, we have no go, no energy, no nothing. And the wonder of the power of this true law is that you can actually turn those desires into enlightenment. In other words, even if you are chanting for a desire which is not going to lead to your happiness, on the contrary, it's going to lead to your unhappiness, just because you chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, the power of that is so great that it will activate the wisdom in your life, and you'll naturally see that's the wrong way to go, and decide to go the right way instead. So this is an amazing principle which no other religion has ever propounded, the principle of turning desires into enlightenment. So certainly in my case, it was one of the things that really perhaps impressed me more than anything else in the teachings of Nichiren Daishonin. Then, what can we read when I observe carefully? So I think that's such a vivid description, isn't it, of the way we see people behave these days. Wherever we go, in trains and buses, Some people angry and upset in their confusion about the state of the world. Other people in the depths of despair. But whatever happens, an increasing number of people becoming, deeply concerned about it. So, of course, our daily lives are a manifestation, aren't they, of our inner life. If the ultimate truth exists in our inner life, then we will express it in a natural way in our daily life, won't we? But if our lives are full of ignorance and darkness, then inevitably we'll express that ignorance and darkness in our daily life. So if what we believe in is distorted or wrong, incorrect or false, inevitably that reflects, doesn't it, not only within us, but also in everything that surrounds us, in our environment. So this is why Nichiren Daishonin so strongly attacked these teachings which were false. Because he knew they were the reasons for all this. So this, was an incredible mission, wasn't it, that he was setting out on. But also, we are setting out on the same mission in our neighborhoods, communities, just gradually, explaining this intimate connection between our life and what surrounds us. And therefore the need to get our lives in order first, through the human revolution, isn't it? So sometimes I was interested to see now, in the dialogue between Dr. Peche and Sensei, which has just recently been published. Sensei uses sometimes the term inner life and outer life. Our inner life and our environment is our outer life. So intimate is the connection between the two. So this is what we have to teach, isn't it? And this is the whole concept of Kosanufu, isn't it? In the words of that famous paragraph in the Human Revolution, the book The Human Revolution, a change in the heart of one person can change a whole nation or even the whole world, or words to that effect. This is what it means, isn't it? The ultimate truth established, you can change everything. So the concept of Kosanufu is that very fact. You may be a doctor, you may be a dentist, I may be a taxi driver, someone else may be a painter and decorator. Each in our own field of society, right? We follow a path, don't we, which is quite different from other people's paths. Each one of us is following a unique path. But when the ultimate truth is established in our lives, inevitably, gradually, very naturally, not in any sense in a violent or revolutionary way, we change our particular sphere of action, don't we? Our particular field of activity. Right? So this amazing thought, we're all together here, aren't we, on summer course, studying. But when we leave here, we spread all over Europe. And we follow our own particular path. And we express the ultimate truth in that particular path. And inevitably, we will gradually change that particular area of society. Inevitably. And of course, on each path, first one, then two, then 100 people moving down that path. In Holland or Germany, in Britain, in America, Peru, Hong Kong. See how amazing this is. Then every so often we come back together, don't we, on European summer course, or to our district meetings, discussion meetings, twice a month. We refresh ourselves, and then we go off again down our paths. So this concept of Kosanufu is essentially natural. A human movement of change and transformation. So exciting, isn't it? I think so, anyway. So, of course, we have the two roles, don't we? In our own spheres of action, as Dr. Yamazaki clearly said the other day, we have our religious mission and our social mission. So the social mission, Ankoku, I know Peter's going to talk about tomorrow, much more, and I'm not going into it today. RISSHO is the religious mission. Risho is spreading an understanding of the ultimate truth, isn't it? And establishing the ultimate truth in more and more people's lives, and therefore in more and more countries and races and nations. Then there is the social mission, which is actually changing society, securing peace in the land through the change in society itself in each particular area. So this is our amazing good fortune, that we're involved in such a fantastic movement. So of course we have to struggle to make other people understand it and, in a sense, to correct them. In the Gosho Embankments of Faith, Nichiren Daishonin said, Chang'an wrote, if you befriend another person but lack the mercy to correct him, you are in fact his enemy. But please note, he first says, if you befriend another person. First of all, we must make friends, right? Then through making friends we get trust. Then through getting trust, we are able to correct them and their understanding of life. So this is the principle of shakubuku by means of shoju, isn't it? By persuasion and discussion. So this is the way in Europe. So I hope that through even these first lines of the RISSHO ANKOKU RON, you've got a sort of greater and broader view of this amazing movement of Causton. Of course, we have difficulties, many of us, in adjusting ourselves. So you find new members who are probably emotionally attached to CND, right? Or one of the peace movements, or to the protection of animals or wildlife, or not using animals for medical experiments, or macrobiotics, eating, different sorts of food. All these things, you find them attached to. But in the end, they will understand that that is really only the surface of life, isn't it? There's something much deeper. There's nothing wrong with protecting animals. There's nothing wrong with, if you wish to, eating a special sort of diet. There's nothing wrong if you wish to, following a peace movement and waving banners. But all of it is useless unless more and more people are changing what's in their hearts. So this is why the ultimate role, the way we change society, is through establishing the ultimate truth, isn't it? In more and more people and in our land. So what we have to be watchful for, of course, is all things that are sapping life force. This is the greatest evil. When we're looking at society, when we read the newspapers, listening to the radio, watching television, in our minds, this should be the most important point of judgment. Is this movement, or whatever it is we're hearing about, is it invigorating life force, or is it actually sapping it? Creating negativity, in other words. And of course, actually, when you think about it, if you read a newspaper every day, some of them are doing nothing else but create negativity in the hearts of the people. So truly, in the words of the Gosho, a ship across the sea of suffering, we should, I think I wrote it down somewhere, we should listen with the ears of Shi Kuang and see with the eyes of Li Lo. I read, in my case, I read the Times every day. Not from cover to cover, not every word, but I know everything that's going on in it. And through that, I can take all that into my wisdom, right? Which is activated by practicing the Gong. And then it'll come out, in a balanced view of what is really correct and what is really harmful to human life. This is something we gradually get used to doing, isn't it? It's living life on a different dimension in a way. But of course it's a very exciting dimension, because you can see to the root of the problem. And through seeing the root of the problem, you can take action to change it. So, it's time, I think, that we close in a moment. But I just end by one paragraph from one of President Keita's recent guidances. By chanting Daimoku to the Gohonzon, the life condition of Buddhahood, which inherently exists in our lives, manifests itself and reverberates in the worlds of Buddhahood, Bodhisattva, and heaven in the universe. Then the Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, and heavenly deities that exist in the universe, in response to this reverberation, lend us protection. We practice this principle every day so that we can gradually develop our life condition into one of joy, which is profound and indestructible. Only chanting Nam-myoho Renge Kyo has the power to enable us to do this. But this is, in the end, isn't it, the be-all and end-all. Chanting Nam-myoho Renge Kyo to the Gohonzon, which inevitably will bring out this change in society and in the whole world. Okay, everybody. Thank you very much.